Okay, let's go.
Gio?
Good.
Yeah, we're good.
Hey everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the sports podcast, Cleats, Skates, and Hoops, where we talk everything sports. On the podcast with us today is Columbus Blue Jackets radio play-by-play man, Bob McElligott. Before we get started, I just want to say what an honor it is to have some of your stature on the podcast, and welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It's good to be with you.
Good. So, Bob, we all want to know, what were the emotions going on in the studio, in the locker room after the big series win against Toronto?
Well, I think relief was one of the big emotions that was going on. I mean, where we are, of course, I'm here in Columbus, not in the bubble with the team, which, stinks,
Of course.
which is not normal. So it better not be the new normal. It better be the for now normal. You
Hopefully,
know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, but I think relief was a big thing, especially after in game 4, you've got a 3-goal lead with less than 4 minutes left, and Toronto storms back with a goal he pulled and ties the game and then wins it in overtime. But they just came out and they did what they did in game 1. They played, as John Tortorella says, and it's boring, but it's true. It was Blue Jackets hockey. They just played responsibly the entire way and finished it off. So yeah, that was relief and happiness and now angst, because now you've got to take on a team that you surprised last year and
surprised everyone.
Swept. yeah, you surprised everyone. That's right. And you swept them, and they're going to be hungry to get revenge for that.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, for sure. All right, so before we get started on the rest of the Columbus series, let's talk commentating. You were the commentator for the Syracuse Crunch with the AHL before making your way up to the Blue Jackets. At what point or age in your life did you decide you want to be a broadcaster for the rest of your life?
Well, I decided very early in life I wanted to do radio. Now, that wasn't necessarily sports on radio. I wanted to be a morning DJ. I always thought those guys sounded like they had the most fun job, right?
Yeah.
So it was pretty early. My brother still gives me grief sometimes, where he goes, "Well, I didn't know what I wanted to be from the time I was 12 years old, like you did. I had to figure it out."
Yeah.
But as I got older, and I was in high school, and I was playing baseball in high school, and I couldn't hit anymore. So I knew if I wanted to stay in sports, I better figure out another way to do it. And that's really when the sports part. I always enjoyed listening to and watching games of all sports when I was growing up. So, I kind of parlayed my radio desires into, staying in sports. And 30 years later, here I am.
Right on.
Cool.
Just to reiterate what Moose and Gio said, it's an honor to have you here. This has been a dream come true of mine since I was a kid, to talk to anybody who works for an NHL team. So the 12-year-old inside of me is just jumping for joy. This is so great. I can't thank you enough. With that being said, you have commentated Columbus for a while now. What is one of the best games that you can remember that you've ever called?
Well, there are a couple of really good ones. I've been here. This is my 11th season here. Once this team started getting into the playoffs and having success, and now you expect to go to the playoffs. It's not just I hope you can get it done.
Right.
The first playoff win was a double overtime win that Matt Calvert scored a goal.
That was mine too.
Yeah, that was huge. I mean, it was so big for the franchise, and that's a memorable one that sticks out. And also an overtime win against Pittsburgh where the Blue Jackets scored late. And then got the win. Nick Foligno scored a game winner. Those were huge. But, then it all kind of pales in comparison after what happened last year against Tampa. Because, those games are the right now it's the pinnacle. I mean, what happens in this series coming up, who knows? And do you end up going further? We're going to find out. But, those are the big games right now. But those other two certainly stand out.
Yeah. Right on. Thank you.
So, season, obviously you guys lost Panarin, Bobrovsky, Duchesne, Zingle. When the season started, what were the expectations? Was the goal playoffs or was it something else?
Well, the goal is always the playoffs now with John Tortorella. He was really good at not using those departures as an excuse. As a matter of fact, he just turns it around. He loves to play the us against the world card, and that's very easy to do when you lose guys of that stature, which by the way, those Panarin and Duchesne and Bobrovsky are all out of the playoffs, right?
I love it, eh?
Amazing feeling.
But that's what these guys, they believe in themselves. And they, even with the goalie situation, they knew they had Jonas Korpisalo. He's been here for a couple of years as a backup. They like him. Elvis Merzlikins comes in, and he had to endear himself a little bit because the guys on this team, they'd heard about him, but they didn't really,
Right.
the core guys don't come to development camps in July when he was in here playing. So they had to learn about him. But I don't think the players were ever concerned about the goaltending. Where are you going to get the points that Panarin used to get? That was a concern, and they muddled their way through. I mean, you don't replace that guy.
No, you can't.
So but believe me, the guys on this team, they never thought we're going to take a step back like everybody in the world did, and their coach wouldn't let them think that. So getting back to the playoffs again, they just expected to do it no matter who was on the roster, and they proved that they could do it.
They're a gritty team too. I love it.
Yeah. Well, we all know that the team suffered some injuries. Atkinson, Bjorkstrand were injured almost half the season. What was the team's mindset going through these injuries with your players out? Where are the points going to come from? I know we touched on this the last question, but where was the team's mindset during all this?
I think everybody was injured except the coaching staff and me. Everybody else was injured. It was ridiculous how many injuries there were. I mean, sometimes it wasn't even every day. Sometimes it was 2 a day. And you were losing your top guys, and everything was fine. Actually, it brought this group together because without Artemi Panarin, I think early in the year, there were guys that were trying to do too much. And now they're trying to spread things out and run and gun with teams, and that's not how this team has to do it. So actually, these guys got hurt, and they started bringing guys up from Cleveland. The guys that were coming in, mostly younger guys looking to make a good impression, so they're playing a simple game because they don't want benched, they don't want scratched.
And Torts will do it to them too. We all know that.
Oh, like that.
Yeah.
But so as they played a simpler game, then the other guys started to play a simpler game like they were supposed to anyway. It actually benefited the team because then they got back to their roots. And but then guys just kept getting hurt over and over and over. But they kept persevering, and there weren't many problems until Seth Jones got hurt. And that was the one guy you couldn't do without. And then it started to show once he was out of the lineup. But they just kept going. And the funny thing about it is, and I mentioned this when we were having this 2-week training camp before they went to Toronto, every guy the Blue Jackets took to Toronto to put in the bubble, every single guy played here for at least part of the year this year. I have seen every one of those guys play in multiple games. So for John Tortorella, he's taking a group he knows. He doesn't have to wonder, hey, if this guy gets hurt or if this guy's not effective, if I put in this guy, I wonder what he'll do. He knows it. He knows what every one of them is going to do. And that makes them a tighter group going into the bubble, actually.
Definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So for me, from the regular season to the playoffs, I thought in this series, Texier really stepped up. Obviously, Cam Atkinson, I think, was the best player in my opinion. For you, who was the best player or players that really stepped up in this series for Columbus?
In the series with the Maple Leafs? Yeah, Alexander Texier was visible every time he was on the ice.
Yeah.
And, this is a kid that came in last year, played the last 2 regular season games, scored his first ever Stanley Cup playoff goal against Tampa. This year he got hurt early, and it was a back injury, and it had him on the shelf for a long time, for months, and he couldn't do anything. Like, he literally was lucky to sit on his couch. That's how badly his back was hurt.
Wow.
So to have him back, you kind of forget how good he is until he's at full strength and playing. He jumped out at me a lot during the series against the Maple Leafs. I would expect he's going to do the same thing in the next series. They have him playing with Pierre-Luc Dubois. Those guys get along really well. They're good friends. So as long as they click, they'll play together. And Liam Foudy was another guy. He scored his first NHL goal in Game 5. He's a rookie. We talked about all the injuries. They were so badly banged up that he came in from the Ontario Hockey League to play 2 games during the regular season, right? They were able to use the emergency recall and get a guy from junior.
Nice.
And, he scores that goal. He was just, every time he was out there, he was visible. So those guys they jump out. But to be honest with you, Jonas Korpisalo had 2 shutouts.
Yeah.
And if he's not playing calm and cool in the crease, then they're in big trouble. So, and give credit to the guy. He got pulled in Game 3. And 2 of the goals were he was hung out to dry. The third one he should have stopped. I'll give you that. Right. But he bounced back from that. He doesn't start Game 4. and then he has to come in Game 5 when all the cards are on the table, and he
Two
gets the job
shutouts.
done.
Yeah.
2 shutouts. Yeah, he's played 3 playoff games in his career, and he's got 2 shutouts. That's not
Amazing.
too shabby.
It's not too shabby at all. So my difference maker, I just wanted to point out, I thought it was Boone Jenner. Although his contract's kind of hefty, I thought he was really good on the forecheck. He got a big goal in Game 4, although they lost, but I liked him. And also for Liam Foudy, we all know him from the World Juniors for Team Canada, so it was nice to see him succeed. So we actually have a fan question, who's a Columbus Blue Jacket fan. So his question to you is, if Wenberg has a poor playoff series, should they try and move him?
It doesn't shock me it's a Blue Jackets fan. Alexander Wenberg takes more grief from the fan base here, probably more than he deserves. However, he brings a lot of it on himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because he's just not put up the points that he's expected to put up. He was a first-round pick. He went 14th overall in his draft year. He had a good season before he got his latest contract, and he is disappointed since then. Should they try to move him? Listen, here, the honest answer to that is, if you could get something in return, because I don't know how the money matches up with other teams. But let me tell you what Alexander Wenberg does really well. He defends really, really well.
Yep.
He's a smart player. He's a great penalty killer. Now, that kind of money you're paying him to score points, not to do that other stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
But on a team that is geared through defense and a good structure, Alexander Wenberg is a good structure guy. So, should they try to move him? You gotta. He's still valuable here, and I know why people talk about moving him. I totally get it. And if you could get the right deal, sure, you move him. But otherwise, you can't just knee jerk on a guy like that, because there are other things that he brings. So the things that he should be bringing, not all the time, but he is bringing something to the table.
For sure. Thank you for the fan question. I have another one too. Obviously, we know Game 4, how that all went down. I just want to know what was going through your head during the Leafs comeback.
I've seen this before. I'm talking about, I mean, playing when the other team pulls a goalie. I saw it during the year. There was a game in Montreal that we should have gotten out of there with a 1-goal win and screwed it up in the final seconds, had to go to overtime and wound up losing the game in overtime. I don't know what the reasoning is, but this team this year has struggled in that goaltender out situation. And, after they got the first one, okay, it's 3-1. When they got the second one so quickly, then you could see panic. And without Zach Werenski being on the ice, because he was hurt at the end of that game, I think that really threw them for a loop, because he and Seth Jones read off each other so well.
Amazing.
When somebody else is out there, it's not that somebody else isn't doing their job. It's that Seth doesn't automatically know how that person's going to go about doing their job, whereas with Zach, he does. They don't have to think. They just react to one another. So I just saw a lot of panic, and when the third one went in, I was not surprised whatsoever, because it was just, from the goalie out, you could just see guys like not being themselves. And, hindsight 2020, maybe John Tortorella should have called his timeout and tried to slow it down there. And I know he doesn't like to call those timeouts because, I think his general mindset is, we've got the lead, we just got to put this thing away. And here's the thing. You can talk all about the panic and the scramble and allowing the goals. They missed 3 empty nets. Right? Hit an empty net. Cam Atkinson, Gus Nyquist, and Pierre-Luc Dubois all missed an empty net. If you hit one of those, you won a day earlier.
Exactly.
So the next series, round 1, you guys play Tampa Bay. It's a familiar place for you guys. Is this going to be the same game plan as Toronto, or are you guys going to try to switch it up here? What's the new game plan here?
No new game plan.
No new game plan?
No new game plan. Tampa's similar to Toronto. I said going into this, the Toronto series, dust off the playbook from the Tampa series last spring. Same kind of team, right? I mean, they're high flying. They have plenty of offense. They like to score off the rush. So you've got to take the rush away from them. You got to take away cross ice passes. And that's like in that Game 5, that's what they did really well. That's how they frustrate you. And last year, Tampa continued to try to make those passes, even though they weren't there. And they did it for 4 straight games, and they never adjusted. I will guarantee you they are adjusting to it this year. How they're going to do that, I don't know. But they are not going to sit there. Last year for Tampa, that was the definition of insanity for 4 games.
Oh, it's nuts.
The same thing and looking for a different result, right? Because it didn't happen. And it's not going to happen this year. the Blue Jackets don't sneak up on them this year, Tampa will be ready.
Looking forward to that series.
And Stamkos and Hedman being out, do you think that they stand a good chance of winning this?
Well, yeah. And look, I can't even count them out with those guys being in the lineup. It's tougher, but there's a history now, right? And when you talk about a belief factor, the Columbus Blue Jackets believe they can beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Lightning believe that they were, self-inflicted what happened to them last year, I'm sure. But the Blue Jackets believe that they can beat them. I don't think they care if Stamkos plays. Hedman's a different story. When Hedman went out of the series last year, it changed.
Yeah.
So if Hedman's not in at the beginning, you better take full advantage of that and exploit it, right? They did against Jake Muzzin goes out against Toronto. That's their best defensive defenseman. You got to take advantage of those situations. But
absolutely,
they know they can beat them. Now, I'll tell you this. Vasilevsky is a far better goalie than Frederik Andersen.
Yes.
So that's going to be tougher. And for a team that is anemic at scoring, now you're going up against him. That can be a problem. Last year you had the Panarin factor. This year you don't. So
there you go.
That's the difference too. But they believe they can beat him, and I can't count them out because I've seen it. Last year I said this is what I said last year, guys. I go, well, thank God we're going to get like 4 days in Florida, right?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, well, we got those 4 days, and then I thought, well, we'll be back here in a couple of days. Never went back. Never even went back. It was over. So I can't count them out. I won't count them out.
No, well, and not to mention too, Torch used to coach in Tampa, so it's kind of like he wants to win that much more, right?
Oh, yeah, he'll tell you no, but he's lying.
No,
of course he wants to, and and they love him there. Well, they might not love him as much as they did last spring, but they respect him. I mean, look, if he doesn't win the Jack Adams Award, I'm going to be really, really disappointed.
It was my
pick. Why is Boston? Why is Bruce Cassidy there? His team's loaded.
I have no idea. I don't. Why is Elaine Vigneault there? I'm sorry. I know Philly played really well, but I mean, for God's sake, Philly just needed a goaltender for how long?
Years.
They had a goaltender that was a GM, and they couldn't figure out to bring up the young goaltender. Well, they finally did it, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think anybody has done a better job than John Tortorella. I'm not saying that because he's the Blue Jackets coach. I'm not saying it because I consider him a friend. I just watch this guy every day, and I watch come on, like, who's Kevin Stenlund? Anybody know? How many people outside of Columbus know who Kevin Stenlund is?
Nope.
Stefan Matteau was a reclamation project. He coming back to play. Nathan Gerby, 5'4", played in Europe and came back over, and and all of these guys not only played but they contributed, and they won. Yeah, and he's got to get credit for that.
Oh,
so,
definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if he does, and the votes are already in, so it doesn't matter what happened against Toronto. But again, it just fortifies my belief that this guy is the best coach in the league this year. He's the best at getting the most out of his team, as you said. I agree with you, Bruce Cassidy. If I couldn't coach the Boston Bruins and have them near the top of their division, then I really suck.
Yeah, seriously, like they're loaded.
Like they play themselves, right?
Yeah,
for the most part. So, no, but John Tortorella had to work, and he had a coach. So
amazing coach, yeah.
So they respect him in Tampa. That doesn't mean they're going to like him.
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah.
Obviously, both goalies have played amazing so far. Who do you think the goalie of the future is going to be?
That's a great question, because now you've got Korpisalo and Merzlikins that both just got new contracts. Elvis got more money than Corpy. So a lot of people read into that he's going to be the guy. I don't buy into that at all. I still think it's going to be the best guy. I think one more year, and you're probably going to trade one of them. Yeah. And they have that year to figure that out, right? Who they want to keep, who can they deal, what kind of deal can they get. And then there's a young Russian in Daniil Tarasov that's coming. And I think he's coming to Cleveland next year to play in the American Hockey League. And I've had two different goalie coaches here tell me that he's the best of the bunch. So
really?
I haven't seen him play. Well, I've seen him come to, again, prospect camp, so I don't count those.
Yeah, you can't really.
I've seen guys look great on the 4th of July and look like crap on September the 20th, right?
It's usually how it goes.
Because you're playing NHL players and you're playing other 18-year-old guys in July. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, if he's the real deal, then you can easily move one of those guys, and then maybe that's a seat that's his somewhere in the future. I don't know. I mean, Elvis. Look, I love Elvis. He's fun. He's got the name, right? He's flashy.
Mm-hmm.
He loves to play the puck. I mean, he's kind of a broadcaster's dream because. So, and my son just graduated from high school, and my son grew up watching Marc-Andre Fleury and old Dominic Hasek, especially in the EA Sports games and stuff.
Right.
And my son was not a technical goalie. I mean, he was everywhere. He was doing out of the net to play pucks and diving and poke checking and all this stuff. Every time I watch Elvis, I swear I feel like I'm just watching one of my son's games every time. So like when he does stuff that other people go, "Can you believe?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's not a big deal. I've seen that a million times."
Yeah.
That's from a high school kid, not an NHL goalie. But he's great. But I got to tell you, Jonas Korpisalo is so much of a under the radar guy. His teammates love him. He's just a quiet Finnish guy with a great sense of humor. He's a team guy. The guys here, they appreciate the way he's paid his dues. 2 years ago, I came outside the hotel in Toronto, and he was standing there with his bag and his sticks. This is 3:00 in the afternoon. "What are you doing?" And I was going back down to Cleveland to play because he was behind Sergei Bobrovsky. He couldn't get any games in. They'd have to send him to the American League and let him play for a weekend. And the guys here, the older guys that have been here, they saw him do that. They saw him have to go back and forth and work at his game and become what he is now. So don't count that guy out. Don't count him out. But when you say goalie of the future, I can't get in that conversation without bringing up Tarasov, because like I said, if one person tells you that he's really good and and he had a knee injury the year he got drafted, he had a knee injury and he didn't play, so he fell down. At least our goalie coach at the time, Ian Clark, was here at the time. He felt that they got a steal on him because he would have gone higher had he played that year.
Right.
But Manny Legacy has told me the same thing. He's told me that this kid's a real deal, so we'll see when he gets here.
So is like Columbus's situation similar to the Rangers with like Shesterkin, Grigoriev, Lundqvist kind of deal? Is that kind of what you're thinking? Sort of like kind of.
Well, again, it could be, except that in the New York situation, one of those guys is near the end of his career.
Yeah, right.
The other two guys are just starting. I mean, with this one, you're talking about 3 young guys, and 2 of them are already in the NHL. The other one's got to work his way there, and so you're talking about in this situation, you're eventually going to trade somebody.
Right.
And whether you package him with a pick or another player to get something you need. But one of them is going to go, not because he's older and at the end of his career and these 2 young guys are outplaying him. It's going to be a battle between 3 young guys to figure out which 2 are the best. And then the other one will move on, and they'll try to utilize that to help in another area.
Right on. Thank you. And we know Torts is a walking soundbite, especially after he loses. So I guess I just got to ask, is he only upset with the media after he loses, or is he like that all the time? And like, what is he like as a person? Because everyone is so curious, right?
He's an awesome person.
Really?
Yeah, he is absolutely awesome. He is one of the most caring people that you'll meet. And that is true. And you go ask any equipment manager that's ever worked with John Tortorella, and they will tell you what a caring guy he is. He makes sure that they get extra time off. He forbids. There's times he'll forbid the players from coming to the rink. Like,
really?
A day off is a day off with him. Go spend time with your family. Get out of here. Regroup mentally.
Nice.
I mean, he really does take care of his own. And I shouldn't pull back the curtain for you guys, but here's the deal. These media things that you see, they're calculated. There's a purpose behind it. We were in Winnipeg. I think it was 2
Go
years
Jets!
ago.
You could see behind me.
Yeah, I see that thing.
Yeah,
I see that behind you. Now, we were in Winnipeg, and I forget what the situation was with the team. Something had happened. We'd lost the game, or there was something where there could have been a ton of attention put to it. And John Tortorella came out after the morning skate for his media gathering, and he just totally ripped into something different. I can't even remember what it was, but he was on a roll. He was on a rant. And all I remember is I was trying not to laugh because I was standing right next to him. And he'd already given me heck about laughing earlier. We were in Boston one day, and he was saying something. I started laughing, and he was like on this rant thing, and he looked at me and he goes, "Well, you stop laughing because you're going to make me laugh." And so, but it's just, and I remember this really well because Brian Munns, who does radio for the Jets,
Yep.
Brian and I have known each other since we were in the American Hockey League.
Oh, cool.
And I get my interview right after the regular media scrum. And Brian said to me, well, good luck with that. I go, this will be fine. And we went off to the side, and he was fine. He talked to me for 10 minutes, and we had our regular talk, and there was nothing different about it. He deflects from his players by putting it on himself.
Right.
And that's why there's so many YouTube clips, and that's why there's so many people that think that he's a jerk. What they don't realize, and you got to be with him every day to realize it. First of all, when he goes to Canada, he loves putting on a show. I will tell you that.
Yes.
He knows it's going to get attention.
Absolutely.
He would tell me I'm lying, but he's lying. But I just think he's really good at that. I think if there is a situation where there could be a focus put on one or more of his players that's going to put them in a negative light, he will purposely come out and say something ridiculous that will get the attention focused on him. The way he does. Now, let's go back earlier in the year, the night that Korpisalo got hurt against Chicago. There was a goal that was scored. The clock got screwed up. It should have counted as a goal. It didn't count. They reviewed it, and they said it was no goal. And the team had to go to a shootout, and Korpisalo injured his knee with the first shooter of the shootout going up against Jonathan Toews. So now your all-star goalie just got put out for 6 to 8 weeks, and it should never happen because the clock was screwed up. Right. Now, what got lost in all of this is they blew a 3-goal lead.
Right.
And they did not play well from the middle of the second period to the end. But he came into that press conference, and he was bang on about that clock and about how they got screwed and they lost the goalie. And it was a one-sided conversation. There weren't any questions. He just went off. And what people think from the outside is, that he's just really mad about that. And, oh, what a jerk. He's just doing it. He took the focus off his team. They never once got asked about blowing a 3-goal lead. Not once.
Smart.
And that's what he does. He does it really, really well. He protects his team. And his team realizes that. And I'm not saying everybody on his team likes him at all times by any means. But they get it. And they know what he's about.
It was like Brooksy in New York. Same sort of thing.
Those guys get along. They talk every time we go there. If you watch YouTube, you would think these guys hate each other.
Yeah, that's why I asked them. They must hate each other.
No, they don't. Larry comes to the scrum. Hey, Brooksy, how are you? Oh, good, John. How's it going? Like it's total. It's not totally manufactured, but a lot of it's made for TV.
Oh, for sure, and he does a great job.
Oh, wonderful. Do you think that his experience really gives an edge for this Columbus team against great teams in the playoffs and in the regular season?
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's not his X's and O's experience. And he'll be the first one to tell you he doesn't care about X's and O's. And that sounds weird coming from a coach, but look, everybody plays the same game now, right? Mm-hmm. They play some variation of the same game, all of them. And there's video. You're not hiding anything. There's no tricks anymore. It's just how well do you play it versus the guys that you're playing against. Mm-hmm. But where John Tortorella gives you an upper hand is the mental aspect of the game.
Yes.
And the motivation, because, like him or hate him. Look, in a Toronto series, what was it? Was it game 2? Yeah, it was game 2. There was the video of him screaming at Pierre-Luc Dubois on the bench, in his face, screaming at him. Not very nice words.
No.
Of course, Dubois went back at him.
Which is nice to see.
And then he snapped. Yeah, but that's okay with him. Mm-hmm. And that's that's another thing that people don't really understand. He'll tell you. One of his things that he says a lot is, I like conflict because sometimes you have to have conflict before you can have resolution. And what he means is guys will walk around and they'll be pissed about something and they won't say anything to him and they'll let it bubble under the surface. He would rather you just have it out. What are you thinking? Here's what I'm thinking, and where are we going to go from here? And then, you can still like him or hate him at the end. He doesn't care, but you're going to get a resolve to whatever that situation is.
Oh, yeah,
and that was the thing with Dubois. I mean, Dubois knows what's going to happen when he opens his mouth to him. He knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But Pierre-Luc's dad is a coach. And John Tortorella knows that he can lean on him and he can push him, and sometimes he knows he deserves that. He knows that if Pierre-Luc Dubois doesn't play pissed off in a series, he's only half the player he can be.
That's what you said last night in the radio.
Right. So if he doesn't do that, If he's not doing it on his own, John Tortorella is going to do it. And again, it's those things that I think make the biggest differences because he is a mental guy. He is about mental coaching. He is about somebody said the other day, Gus Nyquist, they were playing a back-to-back in that Toronto series, and somebody asked him about being tired, and he goes, we don't get tired on this team. And they don't get tired on this team because John Tortorella will tell you being tired is a mental thing. It's not a physical thing. Yes, you're tired, but how much are you willing to go the extra mile? How much are you going to push yourself and will yourself through that situation? And that's what he does. And he does it right from training camp when he has the 2-mile run at the beginning of the year. And he writes them letters in the summer, and he challenges them. During the pandemic, they were doing these puzzles every week to where, they would send them out to all the players, and then the first one to figure out the puzzle would get points. And at the end of it, whoever had the most points was allowed to either not do as many laps during next year's training camp, or they could actually transfer some of the lack of laps to another player of their choosing. So he made it a game, and it's those kind of mental exercises that keeps his team sharp. He's weeded it out here, guys. I mean, he told me the first year he was here, we had this season ticket holder thing where people were going to meet in the room where they have meals down in the dressing room area. And they had some season ticket holders that had won a chance to have dinner with the coach. Well, Todd Richards was the coach at the time they did this. And then Todd was gone and Torts was here. So it was early on, and they asked me, because I interview him every day, one of the salespeople asked me, would you go into this dinner and in case he needs a little bit of help and going with questions here and getting people talking? And this guy, he told those people so many things. I was like, if anybody's tweeting out of here, this is going to be just a storm when we get out of this room. This is ridiculous. He's saying stuff like, if Sergei Bobrovsky isn't ready to play during training camp next year, and if he gets beaten out by Jonas Korpisalo, he's not going to be the starting goalie. I don't care. And I'm like, holy cow, this guy. But he told me that night after everybody left, he said, we're going to change what happens in here. We're going to change the culture here. He goes, because there's too many guys in here that are just happy to be here, and they're not worried about winning like they should be. And 5 years later, they've done that. They have eliminated the weak, and they have kept the strong. And when they sign guys, those guys better be strong because they know what they're getting into. And so it's a culture now, which it went from a country club to a real work culture in the dressing room here with this team. And he's why. I heard, look, when I first got here, Ken Hitchcock was here. He got fired in February. Claude Noel finished that year. Scott Arniel came in after that. Todd Richards after him. Torts is the 5th coach I've had here, and I've been here 11 years. Wow. And he's been here for 5. So put that all into perspective. But everybody said they were going to do it, and nobody could do it until he came along. So I give him all the credit in the world. And I fear that whoever the next guy is when he does leave, do you go the Chicago Blackhawks route now, where do you bring in a young guy, or are you going to the other end of the spectrum next time? And can you keep that kind of culture? It'll be interesting to see, but
definitely will.
That guy gives you more edges than most.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Definitely.
In all your years in Columbus, who was the best Blue Jackets player you've ever seen?
The best Blue Jackets player I've ever seen? Oh, that's a great question right there. Artemi Panarin had to be.
Really?
To be honest. I mean, Rick Nash was good, but I mean, Artemi Panarin is just like effortless points and then feisty on the puck. I didn't realize before he got here how hard he plays to get the puck and keep the puck on the walls and the battles he wins.
Right.
They were really impressive, and he's got to be the best guy, because not only could he score all those points, but he made the guys around him better. Yeah. Cam Atkinson had 30 goals and 40 goals in 2 years that he played with Artemi Panarin. That's not an accident.
Nope.
I think by far, I could put Bobrovsky into that conversation, but I mean, Artemi Panarin is, look what he did this year for the Rangers.
Yeah.
He's one of the most dynamic players in the National Hockey League. So I'll go with him.
Definitely. So we talked about Liam Foudy. He had a great series. He scored in Game 5. We also talked about the upcoming goalie. Is there any other prospects you think people should know about that's coming in Columbus?
Uh, yeah, I'm sure there is. Now I'm drawing a blank. I'm the word. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't care about prospects. I hate the
Really?
prospect talk.
Wow.
I don't like, and I think I'm like Torts in this way. Like when they're ready to be here and they're here, then I'm all about them. In the meantime, I don't care. And that's terrible for a guy to say that spent 12 years in the minor leagues. Okay. Terrible. I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
But I think as it's transformed here, the reason I feel that way is because when this team was not making the playoffs every year and when they were finishing dead last or close to it, that's all we talked about was the next prospect.
Of course.
Who's coming now? Who's on the way? And it's like now you're worried about making the playoffs. Now you're worried about winning and getting into the second round and trying to get to the conference finals and all that stuff. And these new guys will come, like Foodie is here. But you know, beyond that, you know, they traded the first round pick there with the Duchesne thing, so they're set back a little bit. But I guess the Tarasov kid that I talked about, you know, would be the prospect that's going to come over. And yeah, I don't know. If I sit and think about it, I probably get a little bit concerned because Texier was out there for a while, Foodie was out there for a while, and now they're here. And now you just asked me the question, and I didn't have a go-to guy right away, right?
Exactly.
What's that tell you?
Yeah.
Not promising. So just to wrap it up here, you could tell my questions are kind of off board. So who's the biggest jokester you've been around in Columbus's history that you can think of?
You know what? The guy that I like the most, and I don't know if jokester or just overall fun is how it should be categorized, is Jake Voracek. I love him.
Really?
Wow.
Oh, really?
Oh, he's just
Some
he's
Moosehead
great.
alumni.
Yeah, and he was just fun, and he's still fun. I mean, he's one of those guys where, you know, I came in here and he wasn't here for all that long when I first got here, but he's still, you know, you can text when I see him in Philly. He always comes up with a handshake and a hug, and he's, you
Nice.
know, and when we talk about whatever, maybe the karaoke nights when we were out
That's awesome.
early
man.
in my tenure here. So so he's fun. I really enjoyed Jake. And because when I first got here, there were like 10 guys on this roster that had been in Syracuse with me. And I didn't realize how spoiled I was because I was always used to being around those guys.
Mhm.
And then it just dropped off until once upon a time, Derek McKenzie was the only guy left.
Oh,
And
God.
now Derek McKenzie's a coach in Florida. So that tells you how long I've been around.
Mhm.
So yeah, Jake's my guy. Jake was, he was my most fun guy.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah.
Cool.
I just want to say thank you again for taking the time out of the busy schedule. You guys have another series on Tuesday to speak with us on our podcast. We would love to have you on again. It's been a special episode as Cleats, Skates, and Hoops with yours truly, Bob McElligott. Signing off, Gio, Dougie, and I. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you again, Bob. It means a lot.
Thank you
Thanks.
guys. That was fun.